Hey, what you're looking at are two keepsakes. One is my ID for TRW, and one of them is my dad's TV repair shop, the card they used, my father and my uncle. And I want to tell you a sort of a funny story. It's funny. Uh, in RCA, you got to picture this now. It was in Harrison, New Jersey, and it was formerly the Thomas Edison Lamp Company, and they made the bulbs there. And at some point, I think GE bought it out, and then GE became part of RCA, vice versa. I don't remember the exact history. So now I'm inside of a building, and I've been inside in McGraw-Edison. The buildings were, of course, Thomas Edison. When I worked in Gordos, the building was made by Thomas Edison. Almost all the buildings I ever worked in these jobs, I quote unquote, that I've had, were Edison buildings, and they're made with cement and asbestos. But anyway, I'm sitting there, and I'm working a few months in RCA, and this one guy, I think his name, he's deceased, Eugene Kaluzny. Now, we had a lot of Polish people. I think Kaluzny was Polish. He was one of those Golumki guys. But anyway, he would come in and mention the Foundry Law, the Foundry Law, the Foundry Law. What's the Foundry Law? All right. Now, technically, if a woman works in the foundry during the summer, during the hottest months, she could take her shirt and bra off and work nude, topless. Won't say nude. It is nude, but it's topless. So he kept telling me this, telling me this, telling me this. And finally, they start telling me, yeah, in another week, we're going to close down for 2 weeks in the summer because it's too hot. And the foundry, the factory, they called it. It wasn't a foundry, it was a factory. And it was one of Edison's old buildings, and they made light bulbs there. And it had all the wires run for all the power. So that's where the tubes, after they were made in the other factory, the other section, they would go there, and so many hundred would get life tested. And I life tested batches of 10. They life tested it for basically, does it work at all after it's up so many hours. So anyway, this guy Eugene Kaluzny, he kept talking about the Foundry Law, and they're chuckling between each other, the old men. So one day he comes up to me, he goes, I have to go over to the factory, and we got to move something, and your boss said you can go with me. Well, all right, I go and move something. So we go over to the factory, and right away, the doors, they have these fire doors that slide side to side. They have big heavy weights on them to counteract the weight of the door. So you can open it easily, but you can't push the door in or out. It's on these rails. And as soon as it slides back, you get hit with this heat. Unbelievable heat. All right? So you're walking in there, and we're getting close to the hottest week of the year in the summer, which last week of July, first week in August. So it's a week before, and we're walking through there, and it's almost like make-believe. That's how hot it is. And what he did was, he knew we had to move a piece of equipment, and the women nearby would be topless, and they're old, they're extremely hairy because they don't shave, and we're in there, we're moving this piece of equipment out. And he's laughing, he's giggling to himself, and I'm looking sort of out of the corner of my eyes. And then we get the piece of equipment back. It actually goes out of the room, and then there's these, I won't say schleppers. There's a union. Once you move the machine to a certain place, then there's guys in the union that now do the move. They move it to another building or whatever. So we moved the piece of equipment, and Eugene's going, well, did you see them? Huh? Did you see him? Like stuff like that. And then we get back to my bench, and he goes, I took John over to see the women, like that. And all the other women are like, the other men are making fun of you. Like, well, did you see anything you liked over there? Now, the women are heavy. Their breasts they're old. They're floppy breasts. It's tough to tell where the breasts are and where the stomach is. I did a quick look, and this is what they talked about. These guys, oh, we're going over there. I'm like, this is, I hate to see if they were around younger women. But anyway, yeah, that was, wow, what'd you think? Ooh, ooh. And they weren't kidding around. That was like eye candy for them to go over to be able to go over to the factory. But you gotta remember, you're in these rooms, large rooms, and there's so many tubes that are lit. You can see the filament, thousands of them, thousands. And some are coming by on a conveyor belt. Some are coming by on those rolling rollers to be packed. Some of them, and it's noisy in there. You got all these machines. And yes, you have fans blowing, but they're blowing hot air. And the women are just sitting there, and they work in like spurts. They sit in a chair, and then they get up, and they move a few things around, and then they sit back in the chair. This is their day. And then when we get to the 2 hottest weeks, they close that down. And then guys go in and do the maintenance on some of the stuff. It's still hot, but not as hot as when it's operating. And but these guys had a sick sense of humor, sick sense of humor. And I told you about the one guy, Turan. He had a special belt he wore with a hook on it, and he put a piece of angle iron down his leg, a 3-foot piece, and he had a hole in it, and then he'd walk out like he was gimpy. He'd walk out, and if someone was telling me he was doing this, and I'm like, why are you doing that? Oh, I went to his house to visit him. He made everything out of angle iron. And then I told you at one point, they put a sign up, free angle iron. And then he came up to me, and well, first he went around and asked everybody, and no one would help him. So he says to me, would you help me? I'm new. You gotta remember, I'm new. I said, sure. So after work, we go down, and he brings his van in, and you don't call it a truck. He went nuts over that. Well, anyway, that's another story. And I loaded it up, and he goes, the other guys wouldn't help me. And then the next day, he's telling me, he's thanking me again. And that would be a nothing kind of help. You know what I mean? You're taking angle iron, you're putting it in a van, you're not taking something home to fix it for him. And then he starts telling me, I've been driving, whenever somebody buys a TV set in the company store, he delivers it to their house. Or he delivers it to a cousin's house or a brother's house. He's always delivering TVs from the company store to all these guys' houses or relatives. And then all he asked them was, could you come down with me and help me load my van up with angle iron? They wouldn't do it. And the answer was right there for me about people. But I didn't see it. See, I only knew him a short time. And he did me a couple little favors. I did him favors. But in other words, he was like so happy that I helped him. And then I realized that the people there really owed him. He was always helping people. If they hurt their back, he would go to their house. He would bring them their check from work. He was always doing this stuff to help. And there he just wants them to go down after work and put some angle iron into the back of his van. And they wouldn't do it. See, that was it. That was one of those things where I should have learned from him how the people that owe you the most are the least likely to help you. And that's what I'm getting to. 95% of the people you think you helped in your lifetime used you. All right? They let you do their work. And I finally learned the lesson. On TV, Oprah had this guy on, and he says, in life, you keep making the same mistakes over and over and over until you learn the lesson. Now, I told you I was taking in garbage from 2 different people in my neighborhood. They claimed they couldn't pay for it. I don't know what the problem is there. The one guy started paying for the garbage again, and then he was taking in the other guy's garbage because the guy's mowing his lawn. He don't want to mow the lawn anymore. So I told them, work it up amongst yourselves. And then they screwed up. Four adults, none of them could remember what day the garbage man came. And they got overloaded with garbage, and I had to take it again. And I told them straight out, you got 4 adults. One of you has to know what day the garbage gets put out. I'm tired of this. This went on for 6 months. And I told you a woman prayed over me. I was walking, and a woman's telling me her problems, and if I had problems too. Like, and she says, like what? So I tell her about the garbage. She says, you got to learn boundaries. And then my other friend says, I would never take anybody's garbage up. You went over the line. That's disgusting. And at some point, too, they would just point, it's over there. They wouldn't pick the garbage up and put it into my empty totes. They wanted me to get over there, and they said it was too heavy for them. It's their garbage. Don't put out such heavy bags. But that's what you deal with. People use you. But anyway, I just want to tell you about the Foundry Law. Yeah, they kept telling me, but, and then we get back, and I thought they were kidding. Like you say, oh, that's some good-looking woman there. Just being funny. No, they were like, that was a big thing if they could get permission to be over in there in the factory. And Kaluzny's dead now, but he married one of the girls. He was older. He was like in his 50s. He married a woman from RCA that worked in the next room from him. And yeah, I understand why he thought those women were good looking. All right, let's just leave it there. But most of them, I think my one boss, I think two of the bosses are still alive. But all the workers, they're all older. They had 30 years in RCA back in 1974. So you do the math, how old they were and how many years have passed. And I do find online some of them are listed. Like I always tell you about Joe Padner, the country lawyer, as they used to call him. But when you work in a big company, I mean, that was a big company, you meet all kinds of people. You meet people that'll help you. Like Kenny, I'm working there, and this guy starts coming in with these hand trucks. And there's all these books on it. And I said, what is this? And Kenny says, I put in for you for the library. He says, when you work for RCA as a technician, you have a complete library of RCA books they give you. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. It was 3 hand trucks. And they're union guys to deliver it. Oh, so I start trying to put these things away. And then the one boss comes out. What is it? Pray tell? Pray tell, he used to say. And all of a sudden I said, well, and then Kenny come over and says, look, he's a technician. He's entitled to this library of books. I took some of them home. I could do whatever I want with them. And I went through them. I took some of them home. A lot of them were RCA thyristor books, and you only need one book that explains the thyristor and a couple. And we weren't using thyristors where we were, so I didn't need it. But there's several books on thyristors. And oh man, the RCA tube manual, the RCA transistor manual. Then there were books on basic RCA circuits. There were 3 stacks, and a lot of them were just news updates about their hydrogen batteries project, or I told you once before, the microprocessor in the Voyagers are RCAs. They're CMOS, and they picked, even though it was a slower processor, it drew less current, and that's what they wanted to be on the Voyager. Remember I told you about the battery systems. It might be hydrogen, it might be something else, but they can actually turn the batteries off in the Voyagers, and then turn the thing back on. If you read the articles, they have some problem resetting the computer a couple times, and they're always saying that the aliens are affecting the 2 satellites. Go read up on it. It's a lot of wacky shit. But RCA, I don't know. Its peak moment was probably the XL chassis, XL100, and I don't think it had tubes in it. And I was in the tube division, and we were seeing the amount of tubes drop from the United States, but the rest of the world, they didn't throw televisions away like us. So they sent a lot of that stuff to Brazil and South America, and that's when I was able to go on the Trade Readjustment Act. Even back then, we were shipping jobs out of the country. That would be 1974. And the government at that time worked with the union. They decided to give us 1 year of extended unemployment, and it was more money than unemployment, and also offer us schooling. I've told you those stories before. But Yeah, I just want to tell you about the Foundry. Yeah, oh my God. If you want to see old women and the hair under their armpits and the, yeah, I looked real quick and I'm like, you can't unsee that once you see that. But they were saying, well, they can go topless because of the Foundry Law. And this is like, you had to watch what you said in there about hot or heat, or it would trigger the old men to tell you the Foundry Law. You know, ever since Thomas Edison had these buildings, this has been under a Foundry Law in the factory. Blah, blah, blah. Here we go again. I think that's it. All right, that's it.